You're listening to ABC Southern Queensland.
Well, the Western Downs community, if you live in that lovely part of the world, the invitation is extended to you to a forum happening in Miles this coming Wednesday, which is all about learning more about large-scale renewable energy development and what the transition to renewable energy might mean for you if you live in that part of the world. One of the organisations behind this event, this Wednesday in Miles, is Queensland Renewable Energy peak body Queensland Renewable Energy Council, or QREC as they're known. Katie Ann Mulder is QREC Chief Executive. She joins me now. Katie Ann Mulder, good morning.
Thanks, David.
Katie, what was the impetus for this forum on renewable energy development? Was there one particular situation that made the powers that be think that more information is what's required here?
Look, I think there's been a pretty steady feedback from the regions that more information is needed about the rollout of renewable energy development. And when I mean renewable energy development, I mean large-scale solar, wind, batteries, and in some regions it might even be pumped hydro projects. So a lot of engagement tends to happen, as it does, not just with this industry, but other industries as well, in Brisbane or other cities along the East Coast. And we felt that there's definitely a need to move more into regions, go out to regions where the development is actually happening and have that conversation.
So what's the format of the forum, though? Is it a chance for people to just come along and hear speakers and therefore hopefully walk away better informed about the process? Or is it interactive? Will they get a chance to ask questions and put their concerns to people who are likely to have their answers?
Yeah, look, it's a bit of both. We didn't want to just talk at people for a whole day because I think that's unhelpful. That's more, sending information rather than genuine engagement. We genuinely do want to hear how people want to engage and what are the key issues for them and how do we address that as an industry and as a community part of Queensland. So the forums, there's really three parts to them. The first part is speaking, where we will hear from a range of speakers. We'll hear from the Mayor of Western Downs Regional Council. We'll hear from some people in the renewable energy industry, from the agricultural sector, as well as local enterprise groups like Toowoomba Threat Basin Enterprise around things like local content. How do you get involved? The second part of it is we have an exhibition space right next door, so you can literally walk. If you don't want to hear what's being said, you can go into the exhibition forum, and we've got a number of developers in the region, as well as organisations like Coexistence Queensland, our organisation, the Queensland Renewable Energy Council. The Queensland Government will be there, Rural Aid and others, to talk one-on-one with community members about what they see as the opportunities. If they want to, have a private discussion with someone, then we certainly encourage that.
Are there particular myths, rumours that are circulating around about the rollout of the renewable energy industry in agricultural and rural areas that you particularly want to dispel?
Not really. I think overall it's about, what does leading practice engagement with the community, with landholders look like? There are a lot of developers that are around. There are different ways of how they engage. And we want to talk to the community about and get their views on how would you prefer to be engaged with. Where we see it, we would like to see a more coordinated approach and some level of standardisation in some areas. So for things like, rather than decommissioning arrangements or that liability sitting in agreements, that it stays with the developer.
So is there a sense, even from within the industry, that the rollout is happening too quickly for legislation or for proper planning to catch up?
It's a really good question. Overall, I'd say no, that there is certainly a need to move quickly. There is a time frame on, for instance, when the coal-fired power stations that we have here in Queensland will need to be turned off before there is more significant investment. So there is certainly a time frame that's been put in place, and we now have legislated renewable energy targets in legislation as well as emission reduction targets. So I suppose there is a time frame that is set, definitely. There is a plan that is in place, a broad plan, but the how policy, some of the how policy around it is now being worked through. A lot of it is already there. It's just how do we now further refine it so that it meets the expectations of the community, but also investors as well. I think there's a lot of alignment and common ground between both, that both wants the certainty of investment, but also wants certainty of what's happening within the region. Things like the local motelier wanting to be part of the transition, be part of the development that might be happening in the region. So needing to understand what is the scale and pace of development within their region so they can make the proper investment decisions for themselves and their own businesses.
Are there even requirements? And I guess it comes down to what the local government decides on, development issues such as, while the infrastructure such as wind farms and solar farms are being put in place, where those workers stay, whether a company can set up a worker camp and have it all self-contained, or whether they're obliged to use local businesses and that sort of thing. Are those sort of things generally agreed upon ahead of time, or is that purely up to local government to decide? Is there any sort of uniformity on things like that?
Yeah, it's typically a case-by-case basis, but yes, on things like solar projects and in some instances for large-scale wind as well, it is certainly something for the local government to decide on. It is their region. They know their regions best. So where is that best placed? I think similarly with what we've seen in other large-scale industries like the coal seam gas industry in Western Downs, Marinara, Toowoomba and others, is that there can be a bit of a sugar hit with construction compared to operational. So there's certainly a need, and probably more of a need, for renewables to be a bit more clear around the differences of what does the construction workforce look like compared to operational, and then how does that all work together between the projects. Because there is, obviously we're also in a housing crisis in Australia, not just in Queensland, and certainly our regions, from what we hear, are absolutely feeling that too.
A member for Southern Downs, James Lister, has spoken out on this because he's had a lot of his constituents, he claims, who have come to him, have upset that, say, in many cases, their neighbour might have given approval and done a deal with the wind farm that might have put, several turbines, but his neighbour doesn't like the idea and now has this visual pollution that if it were any other sort of development, it would be regulated under a local government ruling and approval would have to be sought. But because this is too new, they're not subject to the same sort of scrutiny. Is that something that you agree needs attention?
I think there's two parts to that. So I would say that there certainly is scrutiny there. It's just not so if we take wind as an example that you used, that's assessed, and the development assessment is through the state government. I would agree that there's definitely room for improvement around engagement practices, particularly around local government engagement, notification. How does that work, particularly in regards to wind development? Because you can see the development, right? So compared to solar, some of the turbines are, depending on what the size is, what the technology is, there can be certainly different heights.
Sure.
But I wouldn't say in that case you would, best practice or leading practice engagement principles are always around what has been the community's engagement process in that assessment. And certainly there is room for improvement there.
Who would you say is the target audience? Who should come along to these forums that are happening? Who would you recommend? Landholders
that already have development on their property, landholders that are looking to have development or maybe curious about development within their region. I think we want to ensure that everyone is informed and knows about the development in the region and what that might mean, how to engage in the process of development assessments. So how do you find out information about it all, and particularly who are the people that you need to talk to if you want to know more? So is it what we would call the front door, which is Coexistence Queensland? Is it someone within, the Department of State Development or Environment? Or is it your local government? Or is it even an industry body like ourselves around there's systemic trends of things that need to be improved on industry practice, then we certainly want to be hearing about that. Certainly want to be hearing about it in advance so that we're not looking backwards. It's always good to be proactive about these things and get on the front foot. We would also encourage local businesses that are looking to put work in developments. So we would encourage them to come along as well and talk one-on-one with developers that are part of the exhibition. And they can also we'll have the CEO of TSB, the Toowoomba Surat Basin Enterprise there, who'll be able to talk about what their process is with helping local content.
Yeah, that forum is coming up in Miles this coming Wednesday. If you'd like to find out more information, it is free. I think they'd like you to book those. So have a look on the QREC website, Queensland Renewable Energy Council website for more details. And I believe there are links from the Western Downs Regional Council website as well. But Katie Ann Mulder there, who's Chief Executive of QREC. It's coming up this Wednesday in Miles.